President Donald Trump just massively caved in his long-running battle to try to force a citizenship question onto the U.S. Census. As I was just discussing with my colleague Chuck Todd, this does actually bring an end to the Supreme Court level legal wrangling that the president lost in spectacular fashion. But I will show you what he said. The president claims this surrender does not mean he's backing down.
The Supreme Court ultimately affirmed our right to ask the citizenship question, and very strongly it was affirmed. But the Supreme Court also ruled that we must provide further explanation that would have produced even more litigation and considerable time delays. The case is already in 3 federal district courts that have been, to be totally honest, extremely unfriendly to us. These delays would have prevented us from completing the census on time. It's deeply regrettable, but it will not stop us from collecting the needed information.
President Trump announcing they are abandoning the efforts to try to force the citizenship question on the census, which, at least in the way they were trying to do it, the Supreme Court did not initially allow. Instead, there will be an executive order that will ask federal agencies to turn over records on the numbers of citizens and non-citizens in the nation. Whatever one thinks of this new request, let me be clear, it does not add a citizenship question to the U.S. Census. The Supreme Court had ruled that the administration's arguments for trying to add the question were contrived, were, in a sense, not true enough to get through a relatively low standard of review at the court. Critics also pointed out that the way the Trump administration was trying to get the Supreme Court to approve this could discourage people from participating, undercut immigrant communities, and also, according to evidence provided, basically support a plot that had been discovered on a dead operative's computer to try to help the Republican Party. I know, sounds like a lot. And it's not the only thing going on. Today, House Democrats reveal they will go ahead and vote on Tuesday to hold Attorney General Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross in contempt of Congress for their roles in this whole controversy. Barr was there today at the president's event, and he sort of congratulated him on this development.
Congratulations on today's executive order, which will ensure that we finally have an accurate understanding of how many citizens and non-citizens live in our country.
I want to get right to it. Christine Todd Whitman, a former Republican governor of New Jersey, also served as EPA chief in the Bush administration and has come out as a critic of the Trump administration, and Fordham political science professor Christina Greer. I will add other experts and Senator Cory Booker in our show later tonight. But with the breaking news, I wanted to get right to it. Is it a surrender or not, what we saw in the Rose Garden?
Oh, yes, but his base won't accept that. I mean, they won't say that. It's a surrender. He wanted to do it through the census, and the idea was totally partisan. And that's really what the Supreme Court said. They said, this is ridiculous. You're saying you're only doing it really for partisan reasons. And he couldn't get around that. He couldn't figure it out. And what they tried to do at the Justice Department, when they removed all the lawyers who'd been handling this case, the rest of the lower court said this is just beyond, and he had to cave.
With him caving, and as you say, spinning for his base, is there a silver lining here that however loudly and misleadingly the president goes along with the courts, what we also saw today is the rule of law holding, because the question will not be added to the census. The Supreme Court is the last word. Do you take any silver lining in that?
Well, I do, except that there's been so much made of it that I'm afraid a lot of people are not going to trust answering the census anyway. I think they're going to be scared away. I think they're going to they don't trust the government anymore because we're doing so many things. And of course, he's talking about a big raid starting on Sunday, going after everybody. It's great to know who's in the country, but the way they're positioning it is not for any reason other than politics and trying to get and telling the American people that these are all, watch out, these are all bad people. They're all come to rape and to kill and to take your jobs away. And it's pitting us against one another. It's not really trying to find the answers for good policy reasons. It's trying to find the answers for partisan political reasons.
It's powerful hearing you say that so directly. As I reminded viewers. You happen to be a former Republican governor. You happen to be a former Bush official, but you're laying out your view of the facts. When you say that this could intimidate people out of participating in the census, do you think that was part of the goal of the administration?
Oh, I think it was initially. Absolutely. I think that was part of it. But also then to clearly to be able to, because he mentioned it. He mentioned it in his speech today about being able to draw districts for citizens. Districts, if you read the Constitution, districts are based on population. It doesn't say citizen, it says population. And when he says we're going to do districts just based on citizens, there's no question that that's a partisan way to approach it. And what people don't understand, I don't think, a lot of his base is it can hurt them too. Because if you start these undercounts because you don't get everybody participating, then when it comes to understanding how much federal aid should go to a place, let's say after the next hurricane, the next big flood, it's going to be predicated on that. And a whole lot of other government programs are predicated on the base, just the numbers, and you won't have them.
Professor, the president was also all complaints about this and other issues at an event earlier today. Take a listen.
Can you believe? Are you a citizen of the United States of America? Sir, you can't ask that question. Why? Because the court said you can't. We have 3 very unfriendly courts. They fight us all the way. The judges don't like us too much, I guess.
So we know that this president has a white nationalist agenda, and that's part of the citizenship question that he wants so badly. We have to also remember that so many families are mixed status households. So as the former governor mentioned, you know, I feel like the damage is done. In the sense that there are going to be so many families and communities that are so afraid of this particular administration. We have the shadow of the raids that are coming this weekend or maybe next month, whenever, right? I mean, it's just there's so many communities that are just consistently living in fear. But why would you be motivated to fill out the census, even if you're documented and you're living with a brother, a child, a parent who's not? Why would you invite this type of government into your home? And so I do think we'll have an undercount anyway, and I think that the president wants that for his various partisan reasons, but I fundamentally agree with you. It will come back and bite the heels of certain members of the Republican Party. Because keep in mind, many of them are losing out anyway. They're losing out on jobs because the president does not know how to manage anything. They're losing out because we have an administration that doesn't believe in climate change. You know, they're the recipients of hurricanes and droughts and floods. They're the ones that are going to lose money for some of their education too. The president can frame it as people from Central America are stealing all of these things and creating all of these ills in your life. But at the end of the day, we know that it's his particular policies that are doing this. And so, unfortunately, for me, the greatest fear is that the threat has already, so many people are saying fear is the point, the cruelty is the point. I think that the damage is already done, because how can you even convince marginalized communities who are citizens or descendants of citizens to want to invite this particular government administration into their homes to answer anything as basic as how many people live here?
Right. I want you both to stay with me. I want to broaden the conversation a little bit and bring in Mike Lupica from the New York Daily News, host of the Mike Lupica podcast. Sir, take a listen to Neil Katyal, who our viewers know as an expert on this issue, who also litigated part of it on behalf of critics of the census, when on the way towards today, there was a sort of a zigging, zagging, probably a lot of time wasted, a bumbling effort by the administration to surrender, then say they weren't surrendering, then today truly surrendering while still claiming otherwise. And Neil Katyal, in the middle of this, was pointing out that he was hearing directly from people who still work at the Trump DOJ, horrified by that process. Take a listen.
I've gotten calls all day from Justice Department lawyers who are saying, this is horrible, please, help us, and that's a pretty sad state of affairs.
You've heard from multiple career Justice Department lawyers currently serving the Trump administration, calling this, you said, quote, horrible?
Yes, I mean, I don't remember the exact words, but the effect of it is horrible and, and unprecedented and unlawless.
Mike, your view of this, particularly on the politics side?
This was astonishing. I mean, this was government by Kendrick Lamar today. I don't believe in laws or system by any means. That's what I believe in, not believing them. And Trump said these things with his tame attorney general standing next to him, congratulating him for this failure today. And I was watching Barr, and who knows what this is going to do to whatever reputation he has left. Ari, someday they're going to have a Bill Barr bobblehead day like they have at the ballpark. And you wind him up and you'll say, congratulations, Mr. President. And to me, the whole pageant today was kind of shameful.
Well, Governor, I ask you, since you served in a cabinet, most of us have never had that life experience. I imagine there are all sorts of pressures all the time for being loyal, for being supportive. And within reason, that's the process.
Right.
And then there are limits to that. Your view of the way the Attorney General is comporting himself, because obviously there was heat at the DOJ, as Mr. Cottrell alluded to. This outcome helps the DOJ because now they don't have to keep defending this untenable position. So he may feel substantively he got things going in the right direction, but what he had to exchange for that was what today? It was his credibility out there.
Well, I've been disappointed with Bill Barr since the very beginning. I was very disappointed in the way he characterized the Mueller report before it came out. He was clearly doing the president's business there, and I had higher hopes for him. His reputation preceded him. It was better than that, and he has not lived up to it. And I don't know why he's behaving the way he's behaving, what he hopes to get from it in the end, but he has been what people are calling a lapdog, and that's disappointing. He's better than that. He should know better than that.
And the Democrats say there'll be consequences for that. Bringing back Mike, I want to play a little bit of Speaker Pelosi on the other issue that, again, in any normal environment, as we say, would be a huge, huge story, which is the House moving forward on contempt for the sitting Attorney General of the United States, based in part on accusations that he completely mischaracterized the most important investigation into alleged election interference and obstruction by the sitting president. So that's a big deal. Here is Speaker Pelosi. Mike.
Next week, the full House will vote on a resolution of criminal contempt for Attorney General Barr and Secretary Ross so we can enforce our subpoenas and get the facts.
Where does that fit into all this, Mike?
Ari, one of these days, one of these subpoenas is actually going to pay off in Trump's Washington, D.C., and somebody's actually going to have to live up to one. We kind of grew up in a country where a subpoena meant something, and what they continue to do with these subpoenas is take them and fold them into party hats. And when you say they're going to hold Barr and Ross in contempt, all I can think is, well, more contempt that we already have for them.
Christina.
Well, I mean, all right, we've been talking about this since 2015. I mean,
Well, that's what we do. We come here and we talk about it.
I know. But each day, we've just seen not just the president, but all the people who decide to be his lapdogs, his shoeshine boys, whatever you want to call them, chip away at the norms of decency and democracy. And I think that we're seeing that our democracy is so fragile because it needs to be upheld by people who actually respect the Constitution and put country before president. I mean, I'm a little pessimistic about the census, but I'm really optimistic because when we have like-minded, sort of sensible Republicans who are saying this is actually for the good of our country, we need to sort of hold our ground and not just abdicate to a president who knows nothing about governance, who knows nothing about governance, and who does not clearly respect the will of all American people. I mean, how many times did he say these courts aren't friendly to us? I mean, that's not the role of the courts, sir.
Yeah.
Read the Constitution.
Well, and that so many other presidents in both parties, I would add, have always taken a chance to go higher when there is a ruling they disagree with, because it's a chance to say, well, you kind of have to go along with it anyway, as Trump did today, however angrily he got there. But you can actually go higher and say, well, I strenuously disagreed. That's why I pursued this policy. I respect the rule of law. He doesn't have that bone in his body. Before I let you go, did you deal ever with Mueller much? Did you see him much when you were in office?
No, I didn't. I knew him because of outside sources, but
he was off doing his thing.
But he was off doing his thing.
What do you expect from him next week?
Well, he's not going to say probably much beyond what he said before. But if he's asked the questions the right way, yes or no, because he's probably not going to go much beyond that. There's a way to ask questions to at least tweak out how much he felt that the obstruction was a real issue.
What's the best question in your mind on that front?
Is it a correct reading of his statement that if they could have absolved the president of obstruction, but they didn't go that far, is that correct reading to mean that they found some substance there for obstruction?
Right. Substance, also known as criminal evidence against the sitting president.
That's to me, the biggest thing that worries me, the big long-term damage is what's being done to what you were talking about, to the people's confidence in our underlying government and our institutions of government and the rule of law, because the rule of law is being just blown away every day by this administration. And that, to me, is a very troubling thing when people start to lose faith in that.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.